Kira, and this is Polymer Clay TV, and today I'm going to show you how to create this fun multi-layered veneer using some really simple tips and tricks so that you can go from this to this in no time flat and start working on a project. It's really easy. Let's get started. To do these veneers, I'm going to use some stencils. These are Flexie's flexible stencils. And they're really strong, but they also flex and curve, so you don't have to have a perfectly flat piece of clay. And I'm going to use some brushes, and this is a pouncer for my paint. This is a nice fluffy brush for mica, and this one I would consider like a detailing brush. Depends on how detailed you want to get with your patterns. I'm going to use this one today, but just so you know, if you want to get into the small spaces and really control where the color goes, you could use a smaller brush. And I've got my Unicorn Ride palette of pigments, which are very sparkly sort of pastels. And I wanted to show you this because they do come in a tray, and I'm going to use the white color from my Metal Oxides as a block out. So you'll see what that's for in a minute. Here's a trick for you. I have a piece of something that I molded with Amazing Mold Putty, which is silicone, and I like to use this to clean the mica off my brushes. So on the back of a mold or even on the front, I will wipe the mica out of my brush, and you'll see me doing that while I'm working. And the paint I have is Folk Art Color Shift. I really like this paint. It dries really well on polymer clay, and I just like the fun, sort of unpredictable colors that you get. So I've got pink flash and orange flash. Both of them are, this is orange with a pink in it, this is pink with a purple in it. They sort of change depending on the direction of the light, and I can verify that they do work well with Primo and Soufflé, which are the primary clays that I work with. And I rolled out and mixed a color. This is about 2/3 Primo Peacock Pearl and 1/3 Primo Wasabi. So it creates this really vibrant green. And I basically rolled out a bunch of it to a number 4 on my pasta machine. And for each veneer I make, I'm going to have 2 pieces. One piece for the veneer and one piece for stretching the veneer. So you'll see what that is all about in a second. And here I have a piece of plain clay, so let's use this one. And I'm going to put down my trellis stencil. This is the Moroccan trellis, and I'm just going to press it down, and then I'm going to use my rolling rod to press it firmly down onto the clay. And what this does is it sticks it down. It also means that if I wanted to, I could have some texture from the actual stencil on the clay. If you don't want the texture, then you just put it on less firmly. If you wanted to go around, say, a tube bead or something, you could just form it around the clay. So I'm going to go ahead and use the orange, because in the other example I have next to me, I used the pink, and I'm still waiting for that to dry. So the way I would do this is by mushing it on and then pouncing it. Because if you just paint it on, the paint tends to be a little bit faint. But if you pounce it a little bit and give it some texture and depth, you're going to get that color shifting. This works really well with silk screens. I'll show you an example of that in a second. Not the pouncing, you don't pounce with a silk screen. But with a silk screen, you tend to have a slightly thicker layer of color than if I were to just sort of mush this on and walk away. So I'm just trying to give you some of my tips and tricks for working on surface patterns here. So I'm just allowing it to sort of stand up a little bit in certain places, and I'll go wash off my stencil and my pouncer. And you can see the stencil comes nice and clean. If you put alcohol ink on it, you might stain it, but paint comes off just fine. And there is my veneer. It's got to dry, but you can see that it has a texture as well as the paint. And what I meant about silk screening with that folk art paint, this is the arabesque silk screen pattern, and you can see that it's got a lot of really great detail, and that is with the purple folk art paint. So it dries, and this veneer's a few weeks old. It's great, it's dry, it's not tacky, the paint works really well. So it silk screens nicely too. Here's a veneer that I prepared using the Ziggy Zaggy stencil and the pink paint. And what I'm going to do right now is stretch it. So if you look carefully, you can see that it's not only painted but also has a raised texture. And I want to get rid of that texture before I continue and do my flowers. So the way I'll do that is by putting another piece of clay under this that is relatively the same size. And I'm going to roll it through my pasta machine so that I can stretch it. First, I'll use my rod and make sure that I get the air bubbles out, that I'm adhering the two layers, that I start stretching it equally in both directions. My pressure with the rod is pretty gentle right now. I mean, firm but gentle, not super hard. Just trying to evenly press and stretch. I don't want to lose a lot of the pattern by just kind of going for it, which is what would happen if you just jammed it through your pasta machine. You'd have some issues with the pattern. So now I'm just going to run it through probably once in this direction and then once in this direction just to flatten it all out, because you can still see that the triangles are raised. Here's where I want it to be. With the triangle design on my clay, but no texture. It's flat now. And I'm going to try to zoom in on this and show you a little bit more of what's going on. So because I had pounced the paint, now I have a sort of marbled look where the paint has stretched. Some of it wants to crackle a little bit because it's acrylic paint. So it's like a fuzzy, I know I'm a little out of focus, but it's like a fuzzy, not super perfect layer of paint, and I'm very happy with that. I'll zoom back out and lay down my second stencil. So now I'm going to put the flower, and I don't want everything to be all perfectly lined up. I don't want everything straight, in other words. So I'm going to roll the flower on top of my already stenciled pattern and get it stuck on there really well. And now we're going to start with the white. It's on there tight. So we're going to use the white powder followed by the colored powders. And the white powder is going to function like a blockout. It's going to sort of give the other powder something to stick to and block out some of that color from the purple and the green, because I want to see the mica. I don't want to see the purple pattern as much. If you have white chalk or white pan pastel, that will also work for this blocking out phase. If you don't have either of those and you wanted to use a very light touch of, say, white acrylic paint, that would also work. Anything that's got that white lightness to it. We're just blocking some of that strong graphic pattern from underneath where the flowers are so that we can put color back in. So my pattern underneath is this sort of pinky purplish color. So I'm going to go for the orange. And remember I said I was going to clean off my brush, so I'm just going to pull that white out of my brush by rubbing it on my silicone mat so that I'm ready for the next color, which is going to be this orange sparkly mica. And this powder has a lot of sparkle. Larger mica flakes giving it a lot of sparkle. And remember how I said you might want to come back in with a smaller brush and do some more details. So I want to see more orange. So I'm going to use my Jewel palette to put some more orange into those flowers. And maybe not all over, maybe only a few of them. Maybe I'll switch it up and do other colors. But I really do like that sparkly mica that I put down first. It's nice. This palette has a nice red in it too. So I'll use some of that. It's a cool red, which will go nicely with the colors that I'm already playing with. And you can go do this process over and over until you're happy with how this whole thing looks. Because basically I'm just making like a mica fabric with flowers and geometrics and just having fun. So now let's see what we've got. So pretty. So now you can either use this as it is, or you could flatten it again so that the whole sheet is more flat with less texture, but I like that texture. If you cut a piece out of this now and make it into a bead or put it on something, you're going to see the texture and that subdued pattern that's in the background with the geometric triangles and the green. It's really nice. So I hope that that gave you some thoughts and ideas on where you can go with layering and using paint and mica together. We'll see you next time on Polymer Clay TV.